How's life been? What have you been up to?
I've been very busy last month.
Doing what?
Working on the corona crisis like almost everybody else in this world, I guess.
So that's what I want to talk to you about. What do you think
Yeah.
about all this? Tell me what's going on.
What do I have to think about that? It's a crazy world.
It is. It's amazing that we're in the midst of a pandemic. This is my first pandemic, so I'm not really very skilled at this.
I guess with most of us, because a real pandemic, it's a long time ago. I guess I think we had one in the 70s, and the most known one is the Spanish flu, right after the First World War.
So if you were like 102 years old, you would have experienced the Spanish flu.
Probably, yeah. And I guess those people can't give us too much information about how to deal with this.
Yeah, they'll give it to us, but they're being kind of sneaky about it. Hi, everybody. Todd Conklin, Pre-Accident Podcast. How are you? Okay, today I am excited. So one of my favorite podcasts ever in the history of the pod, and there's been a lot of podcasts. I mean, I don't like to look at it because there's a lot, and it makes me think, well, that's a lot. But one of my very favorite ones happened, and Bert just told me this, so I know it now, 5 years ago, when I interviewed a young fire operations manager from Antwerp, Belgium, the city and the port. So if you don't know much about Antwerp, Belgium, so it's gorgeous. It's a really, you should go there. I mean, when they let us go there, you should go there. It's also one of the world's major ports. And so there's a lot going on there. And I interviewed this young fire ops person, operations manager person at the time. And he said to me, there's one thing before we go on. And I said, what's up? And we're just having a conversation. He said, I may have to leave because there's a bomb threat in the art museum. And I don't know why that just is. It's just kind of etched its way into my brain. In fact, on the 100th episode, I replayed that just because I liked it so much. Well, time has passed. 5 years has gone by. Much has happened. And today's podcast, we're going to talk to that young fire operations person who's now the chief of Antwerp, both the city and the port. And he is amazing. If you don't know Bert Brugghemans, you're about to get a chance to. And I hope you actually get a chance to know him. His presentations on resilience, especially around capacity for sustainability, are among the best in the world. And I'm not saying that lightly. In fact, let me give you a little taste of why they're the best. He has many loves, an amazing family. He's passionate about his work, but he loves classical music, and he uses Lego men for his slides. So all his slides are pictures of Lego people taken really low and in an angle so they look like they're at scale. And then he uses classical music as really a presentation theme throughout his entire presentations on things like resilience and safety. This stuff we talk about, right? It's completely amazing. And he's just really good at it. Plus, he's just a great guy. And he reached out to me. And actually, I'd kind of reached out to him. We were having a psychic moment there because I miss him a lot, actually. And we decided to get together and talk about the world. I was mostly curious how his job was impacted by the pandemic. And that's what we talk about. But it's funny, that part of the conversation, and you'll hear it because I'm definitely going to play it for you. That's what this is all about. I don't just sit here and have this conversation without giving you the payoff. But his part of the conversation immediately led to leading organizations involved in complex management of change. So get your boss ready and play this one for him because there's a lot here. The depth and breadth of his experience in both leading a large organization and understanding resilience, it's as if the moment was made for this time. And so that's the conversation. Other than that, how are you? So the new world we live in is happening, and I'm reading really interesting things that concern me greatly, and so that's frightening to me at a bunch of levels. It's the belief that there is no problem does not override the fact that there is a problem. And wanting to believe the problem has gone away or is greatly amplified or magnified or whatever word you want to use doesn't really encompass the fact that it hasn't changed very much. And so the world is still in a remarkable state of flux, even though we're tired of it. And we are. I'm the first to tell you I'm done. I'm tired of it. But that pressure to be normal doesn't really outweigh the risk. In fact, it kind of puts us in a position where the risk is becoming unknown, unrecognized is probably a better word. And that, I think, is creating its own set of new problems. So it's not like we're going to get out of this without learning a lot. Nature and the universe and our organizations and our friends and families and our governments and our nations are going to continually teach us stuff whether we want to or not. Not that that's depressing, although I would suggest that really borderlines kind of on depressing. It's also an incredible opportunity for us to become stronger and better and more agile and more flexible and to bounce forward. And I think that, my friends, is what keeps the light on at the end of the tunnel, right? That's the ray of hope that's ahead of us. And I think I'm saying all this because this was such a great conversation with Bert. I almost can't wait to play it for you. That's how excited I am. So sit back, grab a nice cup of cold brew coffee, because why not get as snooty as possible? And cold brew coffee is relatively snooty, if you ask me. Kick your feet up on the corner of your file cabinet at the edge of your desk and listen carefully to this conversation. I think it's worthwhile. So this is Bert Brugghemans, Chief of the Fire Service, Antwerp, Belgium, both the city and the port. He's an impressive dude.
Yeah.
So what are you doing? What exactly is the
role since 3 years or 4 years I'm the chief for the fire service in Antwerp. So I was the director of operations when we last talked. I saw that it was 5 years ago, Todd.
I know, isn't that amazing?
It's amazing. So it was 5 years ago, and it was Stan. You know Stan, eh? Stan Peters.
Yes.
He told me that you wrote this new book, and then I bought it. I'm reading your book right now, and when I saw the title, I thought I have to talk to Todd again. I have to know what he's up to, and I have to know what you're doing right now because only the title, and now I'm reading it. It's very good. Only the title, I thought, yeah, we're working on the same things. This is so good. You
know that your podcast is one of my very favorite podcasts because when you started the podcast, you said, I may have to leave because there may be a bomb in the museum.
I remember.
And I'm so happy it wasn't a bomb. That was a nice ending to that.
Yeah, true. It was great. We talked a lot about leadership back then.
Yeah.
And about different type of leadership you need in a crisis. And about the fact that you have to lead experts, and that's a completely different approach than leading a normal organization. I remember it was a great talk.
Very much so. And now you're doing it. And how does it happen in an applied way? I mean, being the chief now, you lead many experts all day long, every day.
Yeah, true. And they're all busy with safety all day long. Couple of years ago, I had to make a decision about what to do. So I decided to apply for the position of chief. My predecessor, he left on retirement, and so there were two candidates, and one was like the obvious candidate. He was at the age of becoming the next fire chief, and but it was old school fire service, and the board decided to go for me, and decided to go for the new type of fire service. So more technologically aimed, new approach on continuity of the city, and not only on being the red cars that go to the fire, but on a new approach to the fire service. So that's why I got chosen to be the next fire chief in Antwerp, and it has been a great job last 4 years.
What has it taught you? What have you learned?
The last years?
Yeah, because you must be just learning things every day.
Yeah, absolutely. I learned a lot. I think I also grew a lot since back then, but it's different. What I think is the most interesting thing is the fact that I can look at the organization from a very broad perspective. You're not only working on the operations, but you're also working on everything that needs to be done in order to make the operations run and go smoothly. And so that's a much broader approach. And the politics, of course, is also something different. So I guess those are the things that I learned most on. And one of the things that I was only yesterday reading in your book was about the role of management, about the distance between management and the operations, and the fact that as a manager you're far from a position where you have risks, where you have the risk of getting hurt. And I'm very aware of the position I have right now, that it's also far away from the operations, and that's something you have to take into account and protect yourself from stepping into that gap or that risk of becoming the next CEO that's very far from his people and so on. So those are the things that I'm working on, and that I'm learning and experiencing, and making a lot of mistakes on, of course, also.
But that separation, how are you taking care of? How are you really learning what the worker does? What I mean, that's really tough, because your status alone probably changes the environment when you move into it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so difficult. What I'm doing a lot of things. Of course, I've got the benefit that I'm still very young, and that I started from the bottom up, so that gives me a head start on that fact. But I still go to the stations, and I still go talk to people. I talk to people a lot. Actually, I often say that's my job, talking to people. So I try to talk to firefighters a lot, and I'm what I try to do with my organization, but it's not always successful, of course. It's something often very difficult. Is that I try to get my directors to lead the organization on a day-to-day basis, so that I can focus on the culture of the organization and talking to people and the politics of the organization, so that my focus is on getting the culture right and not on day-to-day problems. Of course, in reality, 80% of my job is day-to-day problems, but it's better than 100% of my job, than that being 100% of my job. So that's what I'm trying to do, to keep connected to the organizations, to the operations, and make the right decisions.
How has this changed the way you think about safety?
It only taught me that it's even more complex and difficult than we always think it is. So it's even more complex than I ever thought.
That's for sure. I would agree with you. As I get older, I realize it's more complex than we ever imagined it was.
Yeah. But you can make some difference. For example, we were in an organization that had a quite big blame culture, if I look back on it. And so since I'm the chief, nobody got an official blame. of course, people made mistakes, and we have a system for evaluating people and for trying to get them the functioning right. But we didn't give them punishments, and that used to be the case. And so that's one of the things that I had impact on. No punishments anymore. No punishments because the system failed and people didn't do their job right, and then try to find the last one who had something in his hands, and then he's the one who made a mistake. So we're looking more at the system than we used to do as in the organization as a whole.
Has it changed your leadership questions? Has it changed the questions that you and the other leaders of the organization ask?
For me, the focus has gone more to like a political level of leadership, and that's, I don't only mean the political level of the mayor and the political parties and so on, but also the fact that you have to balance a lot of powers in the organization. You're always working on balancing powers. It's a myth that the CEO or the head of an organization has all the power. Is to take into account a lot of powers in the organization. So you're constantly balancing powers, and that's completely different than any other leadership job I ever did, because then you're talking about managing and leading people and even strategic leadership, where you're working on getting the organization prepared for the next years and for the challenges that come. But in this position, it's a lot about politics and balancing power, and that's new. That's completely different thing to work on.
And that understanding and managing those kind of relationships, that's kind of a different form of risk. I mean, you're managing a whole new form of risk, or
Yeah.
much different than operational risk. Have you learned some techniques to be successful there?
It's there's no book about it. There's no manual about it. Maybe you should write a field book about that, because it's really making a lot of mistakes and then trying to survive in that context. It's really difficult.
But it's the way you recover from those mistakes, right? The way you
Yeah.
learn and improve and go on.
Yeah, and one of the main things I learned is oh, it's my dog.
Is that a fire dog telling us there's a
No,
fire?
no, it's just my dog at home.
Oh, that's fine. I'm trying to decide what the dog's saying to us.
It's barking at the horse next to our house. Yeah,
So
okay.
it's a horse dog interface.
Yeah,
No
yeah.
worries, no problem.
It's talking. No, so one of the main things I learned in that context is to be honest to yourself and to be able to stand in your own feet. So and if you're making a mistake, to admit a mistake and not trying to cover it up, because once you're starting to cover things up and run away from your responsibility, then it's then you're done, because then your whole, the trust in you is gone, and your team doesn't trust you anymore, and the people you're working with don't trust you anymore. So if you make a mistake, just admit a mistake and learn from it and move on. And that's what I learned to do, because you have to be honest.
It sounds like a combination of courage and humility.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like you just described. How
Or
prepared?
just humanity, being a good human,
Yeah,
something like that.
yeah.
It's not a like a Superman power or something like that. It's just being a good human and saying, okay, I made a mistake. I did something that's maybe not honest to that guy or that guy, and just say sorry. I didn't mean to do that. So that's one of the important lessons I learned.
I think that's a very important lesson.
Yeah.
How prepared were you guys? How much capacity do you have for the COVID-19? I mean, how much did this change what you do?
Actually, one of the very interesting things for me about COVID is the fact that since I'm the fire chief, my focus has completely changed, and I'm going to explain myself. But the reason or the way I convinced my board to choose for me as the fire chief is by explaining them that the fire service has to be considered as an organization that is responsible for resilience of the city as a system. And so I convinced them that to look at the city of Antwerp and the port of Antwerp as a system, maybe something like almost a living system, and that you need systems and structures and organizations that that protect that city when it's attacked by something. It can be a fire, but it can be an explosion. It can be a pandemic. It can be everything. And that this threat, this attack, threatens its existence, its continuity. And I convinced them to look at the fire service that way, and to invest in the fire service, not looking at the fire service as a mere cost. You have to have firefighters and they cost a lot, but to look at it as a benefit, as an investment in long-term survival. So that being said, the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, was a really good example for me of a case where our city as a system and our country, and even much of the world, continuity was threatened, and we had our chance as a fire service to prove that we were a very, very important part of the structure to keep society going on and running as smooth as possible, and to keep the port of Antwerp running, keep our economy running, keep healthcare running. So we are not responsible for that, of course. The nurses and the doctors are in most way, but we were able to give a lot of support to them and give a lot of support to the people in the city, and to make sure that they were safe, and that as much as possible could go on in the city. So we proved as a service that we are in this position of helping the city as a system to survive, and to be resilient, and to cope with very threatening events, even like a global pandemic.
That's really interesting. This notion that capacity exists at all levels is remarkable. What did you learn? What are you learning through this? I mean, where were you good on capacity? Where did you need more capacity? What lessons did you take from this?
The main lesson I learned, again, no, it was more like confirmation of something I knew, is that the fact that you can't prepare for this. You can make very good plans and try to prepare for everything, but there will always be things that you don't prepare, that you didn't see in advance, that you're not, that are different from the way you expected it to be. And so it was really our and also from other organizations, our capacity to deal with very unexpected events, very unexpected problems, and even very big problems, and to find solutions for that, and to keep on working, and keep our key responsibilities and our key tasks intact. That was our strength. So I had to focus the last months on two things. That was, on one hand, I advised in crisis management groups, and in national level, provincial level, city level, and so on. And on the other hand, the main task was to keep the fire service running, and to make sure that we could complete the task of being this stabilizing structure for a city in very difficult circumstances. And what I also learned from it is that during such a crisis, nobody asks the question, is this my job? I saw firefighters do assignments that I could never imagine they were going to do in normal conditions. So that's the strength of this organization. And that's what we have to use in cities, and also in companies. We have to use these type of structures when our survival is threatened, when our mere existence is threatened. So that's really what the last 3 months have been about.
What will change because of this?
What will change, or what I hope will change?
Either's fine. Either would be a great answer.
What I hope will change is that companies and cities and countries will look at not only at short-term profit and short-term benefits, but also at long-term survivability. If you have a company and you look at your profit every year, And so you say, okay, I make profit year 1, year 2, year 3, I'm doing very well. But at year 10, there's an event that kills your company and you go broke, you go bust. Then your profit in the first 10 years is worth nothing. So probably it's better to invest every year a little bit in long-term survival, to make sure that you also reach this year 11 and year 20 and year 30 and maybe even further. So I hope, and I'm not sure that will happen after the crisis. Maybe we go back to full normal, but I hope that that companies will look much more at survival and much more at very low probability, very high impact incidents, where the survival of the system, whether it's a company or a city or whatever, is threatened. I really hope that happens, and that you and I get a lot of questions after this, and get a lot of attention from companies, because that's what we're working on. The event that you never wish that happens with your company, what your last book is about. If that happens to your company, how do you survive? How do you go on? And you have to invest in that every year, but it costs you money on the short term. And I hope it changes. Yeah, the reason I wrote you, it was just your book, and just the reason. Okay, this is what it's about now. This is just the spot on book at this moment of the crisis, because people really have to know that in order to survive, in order to move on, we have to think about survivability in the long term, and not only about short-term profit and so on. And if I look at other problems that we are facing, like climate change, and okay, you can discuss about the possible impacts and so on. But if you look at possible events in the climate change, then you cannot or you may not deny that your survivability as in your company and in your country and your city is at risk, and so you have to prepare for that.
I agree.
Even as a citizen, I'm not saying that we all have to become preppers, not at all, but preparing a little bit, being a little bit more ready and more resilient against some threats, like failure of power, water not coming out of the water pipes during a couple of days. It's not that unimaginable anymore that we don't have water anymore, or gas or electricity or internet or whatever. And we are not prepared for that. Not as a citizen, not as a system, not as a company, and so on.
And I think it's so important to talk about it now. And to really come out of this, if we can come out of this crisis with anything positive, it's the ability to learn and to move away from sort of determining why this happened and the blame, to really, okay, what do we take out of this? What's the data telling us? And I think that's an important responsibility. Unfortunately, I think the maturity level that you have is not shared by everyone.
Yeah, but we have to speak up, and just tell people to look at it this way, because what you also see, and I was very much triggered by the chapter in your book where you talk about blame, and when I look at how the media is reporting right now about the COVID pandemic, and how they are comparing countries based on indicators that you can't be sure of, that they are really showing the how countries did during the COVID pandemic, and at a moment where you don't even know what is the final outcome of the pandemic, that really doesn't help to learn from it in a blame-free way. It's about my country, but it doesn't matter. The Economist said, okay, Belgium is the worst country dealing with COVID. But if you look at the indicators they use to make that statement, and you say, okay, but this doesn't tell the whole story. You can make a completely different story by just changing some of the indicators, and it's as true as this story. So that's really a problem right now. And what I see happening in Belgium is that politics they go on the defensive for this, and you said very well in your book, you can't do both. You can't learn and blame or punish at the same time. So now we are on the blame end of the spectrum. We are blaming countries for the way they dealt with the pandemic, and we're not learning from it. I don't know what's your opinion about it, but how does it matter?
It doesn't.
Is it important that this country or this country did better? In my opinion, it's important what countries did that was successful to learn for the next phase. And maybe a country that didn't do good as a whole did something that's interesting for the next phase, but it's not very visible in the whole. But it was an interesting approach they did, for example. So that's what I'm worried about.
So what do you think? I told you. I mean, I told you. I told you. I told you. Now I've told you. I told you. I told you. I told you. So that's Bert. He's just the most pleasant person on earth. I think I'm going into some kind of weird podcast crush. That's what it feels like right now. But I really wanted to share this with you because I think it was worth our time to listen to. That is the pod. I owe you 2 minutes. Sorry, we went long. But, I left the dog barking in because why would you cut that? I can't think of a reason to cut that out. That's a real honest-to-goodness fire dog talking to a fire horse. I mean, what other podcast are you going to get that on? Huh? You can listen to any safety podcast you want to. You're not going to get that conversation. That's a world-class first exclusive. That's what that is. So thanks for being here. Subscribe. Tell your friends. Keep listening. I appreciate you so much. It's been a fun ride so far, hasn't it? And we're not done. There's so much more. So learn something new every single day. You did today. No question about that. Have as much fun as you possibly can. Be kind to each other. Be a human being, as Bert said to us. And most importantly, be safe.